Good evening. Your time now is 5:52. I'm Jeanette Reyes.
And I'm Mona Kosar Abdi, and this is Off the Record.
Not for real. This is Off the Record.
What was the most surprising thing you've seen, like jaw dropped?
Master with a fire truck? Cool. Tell me more.
Man, my jaw is on the floor.
Meet Marissa Nelson, the licensed relationship therapist and certified sex expert who helps couples transform their sex lives and unlock the secrets of true intimacy.
Let's talk kinks.
They might say, well, I know how to give a great blowjob, period, point blank. If you don't like it, that's a you thing.
Does the CEO want to be controlled? Does the stay-at-home mom want to take over?
How do you spice things up?
This is gonna be a little unconventional, but
Is it like love-making and dramatic? What's the wildest place somebody has had sex that they've told you?
The Eiffel Tower?
some couples, it's super erotic and there's whips and there's ball gags and there's a whole bunch of things.
The little racy text, I accidentally sent it to one of my friends.
No.
Before you go and buy a toy, get a new lube, or anything like that, you need to understand.
Marissa, welcome to the group chat.
Yay, thank you for having me.
Oh.
We have been dying to have you in the group chat, by the way.
Yes.
Everybody has.
I'm so excited to be here. I mean, y'all are always an amazing, fun time, and I'm really excited. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Okay, so you are a couples and sex therapist, and we are gonna go there today.
Let's do it.
Let's unpack it. Just give me a little bit about your background as well and how you got into this field.
Oh, absolutely. I started out when I was getting I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. And when I actually started out in outpatient psychiatry. I was doing in-home family therapy in Philadelphia, and I was getting a lot of kids. So a lot of little kids. Their schools would refer them. And when I worked with them, I'd find out that a lot of my treatment team wanted to medicate them. They said, oh, this baby has ADHD or they have this conduct disorder. And then I would talk to them and realize that there was a lot happening at home. Parents divorce, independent partner violence, they're seeing violence or they're seeing their parents be super disconnected. So for me, I was like, bring me your parents. And I really, through that process, started to love couples work because relationships don't come with a manual. We are all just winging it out here. And especially for families and people who are married, I think that my passion is helping to keep intact families and to strengthen families. And that starts at the top. And so if you can have healthy, thriving relationships, you model that for your children. And so for me, that's why it was super important for me to become a couples therapist. And then how I became a sex therapist is that a lot of couples were talking about sex. And I think you have to know what to do with it because I think there's so much rich data in understanding how couples relate to intimacy.
So how important is sex to a relationship?
Super important. I would say that it is integral to a relationship. And for a lot of couples, maybe when it becomes an issue and intimacy becomes an issue, it gets huge. And now that becomes so central to dissatisfaction, feeling rejected, and just not feeling as connected as they would like to feel.
I wonder what was the most, because sometimes I envy like couples therapists because you
Really?
truly see the behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And I think it gives you real perspective and the whole couples goals, I'm sure might not
Yes.
exist for you, at least to an extent, because you see the real.
Yeah.
What was the most surprising thing you have seen, like jaw dropped in your office in a session?
You know, I guess for me, all behavior makes sense. So masturbate with a fire truck, cool. Tell me more. Like all of these things, like it makes sense to me. It's just about really understanding the meaning behind something. But I think, jaw dropping, I don't think anything surprises me these days.
Man, my jaw is on the floor. First example out of the gate, I'm like, wait. And listen, this is why you do what you do, because I would be like, what?
You have your face,
Yeah.
but genuinely, like when I have my hat on,
Yeah.
it all makes sense.
So what would other people find surprising? Like given what we talk, the conversations that you see on
Yeah.
social media, what would people find surprising?
I think people would find super surprising is that it's actually pretty normal that a lot of people don't have sex in their relationships. I think that it's really surprising that people go weeks, months, and sometimes years without being intimate, and nobody talks about it.
Where do you think the fall off happens? Because I also do feel like for newer couples, you almost have this looming fear that one day maybe we're going to drift apart and all of a sudden we don't have sex anymore.
Yeah. Like, what are some of the warning signs around that? Well, I think that modern life doesn't set us up for success. That's part of it. I think that there are a lot of different seasons that we're going through, professional seasons where we might have to lean in a little bit more at work, personal seasons where we have to lean in a little bit more with our children, crisis seasons where, you know, you might have a family member, even a health crisis come up. And all of these things are priorities and take center stage rather than our intimacy and connection. I think that sex is one of the things that gets thrown in, you know, the back of the closet or on the back burner. And I think that that's one of the telltale signs when you are not prioritizing your intimacy, you're not prioritizing yourself or your relationship with pleasure is going to be further and further away from you.
So where do you come in? Like, what do you do?
What do I do? I think, well, I hold sacred space for people because I think that when you talk about sex, especially as a sex therapist, when, you know, Ubers, planes, all the things, I very much like, oh, I'm a therapist. And they're like, well, what kind of therapist? I'm a sex therapist. And they're like, listen, so we haven't been intimate. People, nobody do small talk with me. It is straight into medium deep talk.
Meanwhile, you're like, it's Terminal 2.
It's like Terminal 2. You know, I didn't even put my tray table up. But I think that it's wonderful in the sense of people, it's an area where we don't have enough skill building around, but it's something that is deeply felt for us. It holds our deepest insecurities, our body image issues, our trauma, our fears. Many times people are so afraid of being rejected by their partner. They're so afraid of not being wanted anymore. I think that it's just so surprising that people will be in really loving relationships many times, but they will still say, I don't think my partner wants me. Maybe if I work out a little bit more, they'll find me more attractive. Or maybe if I do this, then maybe they will want to be intimate with me. And so when intimacy declines, then we take it so personal that it starts to erode our own sense of self and our self-confidence.
So do you think the way sex is portrayed in the media, that it leads to some of the misconceptions that we have around it? That it's supposed to be this passionate, wild experience that usually is on the kitchen countertop. Like, it's always on the table. I'm like, don't y'all eat there? Anyways.
I know. Yeah, I do think that it sets us up sometimes for unrealistic expectations. On the other side, I do think that it gives us some curiosities about what is erotic to us. So I don't think that it's completely bad because we don't know sometimes in our own sexual evolution what's going to be exciting or sensual to us until we see it. And then you're like, oh shit, that's it, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't mind that. But I think where it goes wrong is that we are groomed to believe that performance is sex and the performative aspect of sex and how many orgasms are we having? How many times a day or how many times a week are we having sex? Right. Like, that's the sex. And I think that that's one of the reasons why sex feels so pressure-filled for people. And if they're not in that zone or the right, you know, frame of mind, they are less likely to be open to receive pleasure.
You mentioned how many times a week. So I'm curious really quickly, how often should you be having sex?
As often as your body desires sex.
And what if your body has
not desiring
since 1982?
Well, that's when you need to see someone like me, or feel free, reach out to, like, it could be hormonal because, you know, many of us are moving through the life cycle. And so hormones affect intimacy. You know, if you are on depression or anxiety medication and birth control, that affects intimacy. Stress affects intimacy. And so all of these things that we are not aware of also diminish desire. And I think that when we don't feel it, it's one of those curiosity points to say, okay, I might need some support around this.
Let's talk a little bit about shame, because I feel like shame is woven into this deeply. And there are a lot of people, for example, like religious reasons that are abstain from sex, but even in a marriage, they feel that shame or guilt.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
It's multi-layered. I can even think back to a lot of the clients that I'm working with and feeling as though God is going to punish you for feeling pleasure, feeling wrong with pleasure and intimacy, and when they have sex or the kind of sex that they desire, that kind of shame of, am I displeasing God? Am I is this a conflict with my religion or who I know myself to be? And so a lot of the work that we do in the office is really around dismantling pleasure and the permissions that we give ourselves to have sex, to be intimate, to be touched, and to experience receiving pleasure, because sometimes we have a deep worthiness problem. Shame is really rooted in our not feeling a sense of worthiness. And sex is the arena that worthiness most of the time plays itself out, because if you are not desiring me or you're not initiating sex, then some people say, well, I'm not worthy enough. I'm not good enough. If I have an erectile dysfunction or sex feels painful or I don't feel like having sex, then I feel like I'm just not good enough or I'm broken. And so you see a lot of that play out with sex. And so, unfortunately, I think that, when it comes to shame, people feel so much shame and guilt for not showing up the way that they would like to sexually.
I wonder how that manifests, because I grew up going to, church, but also Christian schools where it was courting. You don't kiss until you get married. I was in a relationship like that for like a month.
Yeah.
It's like, you couldn't be alone. I mean, and this is me being a junior in college. I mean, I'm a grown woman, which I don't think it's a bad thing, but I do think that it becomes a problem when there's shame attached to it and your value is attached to whether or not you're a virgin and how clean you are going into marriage for your husband, specifically for women. How do you see that manifest itself for women in particular?
Oh, for women in particular, in that specific situation, I've seen it manifest in vaginismus, for example, which is basically, I describe it as the vagina having a panic attack. It makes it very hard for penis, fingers, anything to penetrate, and it becomes very painful.
So it's like physiological.
It becomes physiological because that's how we work. We don't compartmentalize our stuff, including sex. And so many times when sex gets wired into us, we have our association with sex as negative or shameful or guilty, then sometimes we see a lot of physiological cues of that. Pain, vaginismus, anxiety during sex or even before sex. And if anxiety happens before sex, you start to see a lot of anticipatory anxiety, meaning like if a partner comes to hug you or kiss you or touch you, you can feel your body tensing up because the mind is saying, oh no, what if this leads to something?
But on the other side of it, because I feel like there's a lot of conversation about body count socially. And I realize that it has a lot to do with just shaming women and sexism. But I do want to know from your professional standpoint, is that relevant in the conversation or is it a person-to-person thing?
I think for some people, they would say it's person to person, but I always ask, why does somebody ask that question? And I think that people ask that question because I do think a lot of it is about trust. A lot of it is also about the way in which they operate sexually. Like if I were to be in relationship with you, what does it mean if you've had over 100 partners? And what does that really say about me as a person who wants to be in connection with you and who wants to be sexually with you? I think that psychologically, it's also about emotional safety. Well, if I know that you have been intimate with X amount of people, well, can I trust that what happens between us stays between us and that you could be, faithful or otherwise to me? Because when that comes up in my office, that's one of the biggest reasons that people are asking that questions, because they want to know, have you cheated before? And those are some of the reasons why.
I'm curious, actually, speaking of experience, how much of a role does experience play, having had a few partners, when it comes to a good sex life? Like, I'm experienced, that means we're gonna have a good sex life versus I've had a couple partners.
Well, I think experience matters, but every person is different. And so everybody wants something different. And every phase of your sexual life, it's going to require a different part of you to show up. So it's great when somebody has experience. That means that they hold space, they know how to be a good lover, a good partner. Hopefully they listen really well and you have really good sexual communication so that you can kind of play off of each other and have like a really erotic life together. But that only matters if you bring that skill set into your current situation and what's happening for you right now. Because I've seen a lot of very experienced people really struggle after the birth of children because sex is not happening as often, or it looks differently than it did before. So then when we talk about worthiness, that's something that comes up a lot, because they're like, well, I know that I can crack a back.
Yeah.
What's going on?
It must be a you problem.
It's a you.
Right. You know what, though? I just want to get to this real quick. Women and orgasms.
Yes.
And women who have never experienced an orgasm. And how that's viewed versus a man getting his.
Well, there is definitely an orgasm gap. Let's just name it.
Is there an orgasm recession, drought?
Epidemic.
Yes, because you are only going to allow as much pleasure as you believe that you deserve. Especially as women, we've been socialized to care and serve in so many different ways. Our children, our lives, our communities, our orgs, all of these different things. But when it comes to our own pleasure, sometimes that feels very foreign to us. And it feels very difficult for us to receive. And so something like an orgasm, literally our clitoris is here.
Created for
and
it,
its
yeah.
only function is for pleasure. And for us, it seems sometimes really difficult or challenging for us to embrace pleasure. And so orgasm is essentially the manifestation of pleasure. You have to have enough presence. You have to feel in your body. You have to be present with yourself and the experience to be able to get to that point. And sometimes taxes, kids, lights, what I got to do next takes us out of erotic focus and takes us away from orgasms.
I'm curious, with type A, hyper-independent, ambitious women, or even just women who are more likely to stand up for themselves and advocate for themselves in just everyday life, do you find that shows up in the bedroom, and how
course.
So the CEO type.
1000%. I think with a lot of the executives and the CEOs that I work with, every day when they go into the office, they got to put out 1,000 fires. Everybody's asking them for stuff. They got back-to-back meetings all day. Yeah. When they come home, literally, some people just want to be taken care of. They just want to be submissive. They want somebody else to be in control, or to like figure out what to eat. That's fine. Figure out they really genuinely crave being taken care of.
So are they more likely to have
orgasms?
So
sometimes they are more likely to have orgasms if they allow themselves to be submissive, if they allow themselves to be present, if they allow themselves...
So I'm like, oh, okay.
If they are having the kind of sex that allows them to do that. Also, just structurally, women 70% of us only have orgasms, don't have orgasms at all through penetrative sex. Mm-hmm. It requires different types of stimulation. It requires tongues. It requires maybe a little bit, whether it's oral sex or fingering. I mean, it requires something different. Not everybody is having, orgasms through penetrative sex, but you have to be able to create the conditions for that to happen. I think that's one of the things that I'm saying. Orgasm for some bodies are more easier than others. It could be stress, it could be tension, it could be a whole lot of things. Or maybe you're just not having the sex or the stimulation that you like.
Let's circle back.
Yeah, I know.
I do want to know kinks. Let's talk kinks.
Sure.
What are some unconventional sexual preferences that people have approached you with, or that you've come across?
I mean, there are lots, from foot fetishes to, furries to, dressing up, to leather and shoe fetishes and fetishes for bodily fluids. And there's a whole host of things that people are super interested in.
And what about the disconnect? Like when one person really is into a lot of unique things and the other person is like, I'm good with the conventional.
That's work where they have to cross the gap, and everybody has to do some stretching, because if you're into being urinated on and your partner is not into receiving that, then that's something that we really have to work with.
And like, what if it even is the compromise? Like, I like to be urinated on, you don't. What's the middle ground here?
I
I'm over here like, how do you even do water?
No, that actually can be. That actually can be.
Can we actually talk, where does that come from?
It comes from we are all wired differently, and what is erotic to us is very personal experience. I don't necessarily know. I'm not going to say it's childhood and all of these things. I just think that we pick it up along the way, and things that are interesting or erotic to us sometimes evolve over time because our sexual preferences, our desires, our attractions are very different than what they were, years ago. It's just something that evolves over time.
That was not a judgment. Get yours however you want.
Oh yeah, listen.
This is a safe space. I was just
totally
curious
safe space.
about,
but I think that
originate.
how you cross a divide, I think a lot of times is understanding like how couples can work together and collaboratively to have the best sexual experience.
I'm curious, is a kink or a specific preference in sex, is that, and has that ever been a reason to like, okay, you might need to go and do your thing because I'm not going to be the one. So have like an open relationship to fulfill your needs. Is that a healthy reason to do that?
I don't know if it's a healthy reason, but different strokes for different folks. I mean, I definitely have a lot of couples that I work with that are poly or have different relationship structures, and they do have it for various different reasons, including, my current partner doesn't play the way that I would like to play. I'm into BDSM. My primary partner is not. And so my other partner is, and that's where I get to experience that with, of course, kind of consent and talking and collaboration with, my primary partner, and having that be within the rules and boundaries of our like shared agreement. So yes, it does happen that way with a lot of couples, but just for the average, non-poly, like monogamous couple who may have been married for or been together for a really long time and enjoyed their sex life, and maybe a partner wants something and desires it and you don't. I have seen on the opposite side where the partner who may want and kind of really desire more erotic play, after a while, it becomes like, oh, okay, I like that too. If as long as the partner is like really open to it and really understands like, this is a way that continues to build us and a way that we experience each other in this amazing sexual way. Sometimes that's a lot of what it takes for them to really be able to connect.
So how do you have that conversation, whether it is like, hey, this is something I'm into? Because I'm sure there's a lot of shame around that as well.
Yeah.
And like, it may not be received well. Or even on the other side, just, hi, you're not very good at this. And we need some work, but I don't know how to say that without hurting your feelings.
I think that's one of the biggest things that's holding back our sex lives. Like, we are so afraid to hurt our partner's feelings. And we do it in a lot of love and compassion and protection. I think the reason why we do that is because we're very protective of our partners. We don't want, the stuff outside of the bedroom could be really great, and we don't want to rock the boat. And so it's harder for us to say, hey, I really don't like the way that you kiss. I hate the way that you initiate sex, which I think is one of the bigger things too. Yeah. I think there are a couple of things. We don't ever want our partners to be in intimacy or to shame them or blame them. I think that a lot of times we know in sex how to say what we don't want. We don't always know how to say what we do want.
Or what you do really well.
Or what you do really well.
Yeah.
We don't always praise each other when they get it right. And so I think that before you talk about what's wrong, I would just be like, listen, I really appreciate our sex life. I love you as a partner. These are the ways that you are an amazing sexual partner to me. I love when you do this. I love when you do that.
Yeah.
But here's what I do like. So I like hand over hand. If you are in sex or you are in intimacy and something feels off, instead of being like, don't do that, or swatting away a hand, take that person's hand and show them, this is what I actually like. This is how I like to be touched. And I think that that's helpful.
Right.
If you're not being intimate and the conversation does come up, I think that you need compassion. You need to be able to hold space and say, listen, I just want to be open and honest, and I want you to know this has nothing to do with you as a lover or as a partner, because I care about you. But here are some things that I think would be so amazing that would make me feel more pleasure or make me more into this sexual experience. And I think that when you say things that way, it opens space for that partner really to be able to receive it and not be defensive.
And be like, well, first of
And
all,
be like,
you
first
don't
of all,
do
well,
this.
you don't do this and you never do
Yeah.
this. You don't want to get into that. And a lot of times that's where sex goes.
Right.
That's talks and conversations around intimacy go that way.
I think it also speaks to this expectation, I think particularly for men, that you have to naturally be good at it.
Yes.
And you have to naturally know your woman and make her orgasm. And if you don't, there's something wrong with you.
Absolutely. I think that you hit it spot on. With a lot of the socialization that male partners receive is that there's no space for evolution.
Right.
There's no space to be able to get feedback. You either know it or you don't. And I think that's not just for men too. That's across the board, because again, this is what we feel good about. We know ourselves. We know that we're good lovers. With a lot of, those who identify as female, they might say, well, I know how to give a great blowjob, period, point blank. If you don't like it, that's a you thing, Although everybody's different, and even just our appetite and what we want that day is also different. So I might want it really sloppy. The partner might want it sloppy one day, and another day they want it differently.
Yeah.
So you really have to be able to know that intimacy is an ongoing process of evolution between two people.
I'm wondering what patterns or trends do you see depending on the person's job, like the CEO or the stay-at-home mom? How does that impact their sex life that you've seen?
I think that's a really great question. I think, there's
Like,
so
does
many
the
different
CEO
ways.
want to be controlled? Does the stay-at-home
Sometimes.
mom want to take over?
Yes. All of the above. Because I do think that for some people, they love control. And they love control. And sex is another place where they're like, I want to be on top. I want you to do this. And they're very directive, know?
Yeah.
And that's what gives them that erotic pull. And then for some people, it's really about pleasing and satisfying their partner. And that sense of when I see my partner's pleasure, that gives me an incredible amount of pleasure. I think that that's one of the things that is such a turn on, to watch their partner really kind of be pleased and to get off is their pleasure. And that's what they get off on as well.
So how do you spice things up? Because I'm not coming out in a full maid outfit and you just giving me a lackluster. Like, because now we beefing and we're gonna have a bad week. But like, how do you change it and like try to make something more exciting without being like, oh, that was a flop?
This is going to be a little unconventional, but trust me, there has to be space for awkward intimacy. And I truly...
But that's not what happens in the movies, though.
Point taken. But that's why in your real sex life, there has to be space, because there is awesome power in awkward intimacy. Because I think that it's where we get to decide what we like, what we don't like, what is cringy to us, and what feels good to our bodies. And when we're afraid to go into that brave space, we avoid sex, we avoid intimacy, we avoid hard conversations. But when we allow ourselves to play and laugh about it, be like, oh, okay, like that happened, all right. Well, it brings lightness sometimes. It allows us to work through the kinks and also use that as like a growth zone so that you can get to the hot, sexy, banging intimacy that you actually want.
I'm dead.
Like, has that happened to you?
I find that, I don't know, like we have a lot of fun in our sex life, and we can experiment, and we don't mind the awkward, but sometimes I'm like, I don't know, like I feel like we shouldn't be laughing this much. Let's be serious. But
why?
I think it's because we're just really, really good friends and we feel comfortable with each other. You know what I mean? Like, I don't feel like I'm putting on a show.
That's right.
Like, he's my best friend, so it's cool. And it's just like, okay, like let's not do that again. Or like, let's try that, later on tonight. But I don't know how you're the one who's inside bedrooms. Like, are people like, I don't know. Is it like love making and dramatic and,
Is that my tone?
So that's a no.
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
I think that every sexual experience looks super different. So clients, for example, I have a client that I just worked with this week. They just had vacation sex. It was like off the charts. But then I say, why? Why is it that? And I'm like, yes, yay you. Congratulations. Super excited for you. But what were the conditions that created that? And I think that that's what we lose sight of. Like, sometimes we feel that vacations or date nights or times away is the one time where we really get to release and let go. And how do we bring that into our everyday life and bottle that up? And so for you, laughing and humor, actually, that is deep intimacy. And I love the way that you do sex, because for me, that shows me that you are so intimately connected. There's room and space for laughter. There's room and space for joking around, and also at the same time switching gears and being really erotic with each other and being present with each other. For some couples, they don't make a noise, you know, and that's for them. They just enjoy doing their thing. For some couples, it's super erotic and there's whips and there's ball gags and there's a whole bunch of things, you know. For some couples, they like to be a little bit more adventurous and they like to be exhibitionists and they like...
What's the wildest place somebody has had sex that they've told you?
I mean, wild?
I love how nothing is like shocking.
That's just like the Eiffel Tower.
Some people are very much exhibitionists. And so I've heard of church parking lots. I've heard of, you know, underwater, you know, holding their breath. Like they're just like some...
You orgasm and you start choking on it.
I do not recommend that. I'm just
Strong water.
a strong advisory. Do not do that. I'm not condoning. I'm just relaying. Yeah, I mean, there's just wild things. And I mean, also just kind of bucket list fantasies. People want to have sex in airplanes. People want to have people like the Mile High experience. People like, there's especially a very big like sexual draw to being caught. And so doing it in places where they could be caught.
Oh,
there's a big sexual charge for
like,
some people around that.
Yeah.
They're like,
Can you imagine?
Right. But no, I get the thrill of it.
There's
Like I would
thrill.
imagine, especially the longer you're in a relationship.
Yeah.
In fact, I guess that's my question. Is the bar higher as far as feeling that thrill and like wanting something new? How does that correlate when you've been in a relationship for a long time?
well, sometimes we lose that because when you've been in a relationship for a long time, one day turns into the next, that turns into the next. And I think that a lot of relationships want a lot of spontaneity. They want adventure. They want surprise. They want to be kind of like, ooh, that's different, you know? Because I think a lot of the elements before we got together, like anticipation.
Yeah.
Like I remember when I used to leave the club 2:00 in the morning, I'm like, what's up? Where you at? You coming to my house or I'm coming to your house? Like that kind of anticipation. Then you just be like, ooh, well, let me go get ready. And ooh, let me do this or let me do that to get ready. So that anticipation that drove desire sometimes is so missing in our everyday life. And so I think that that's one of the biggest ingredients in a long-term successful sex life is how do we anticipate desire and anticipate each other again? How do we create that?
So scheduling sex.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Yes.
So you say go for it.
1000%. To me, it's just math. Scheduling sex plus organic sex equals more sex. I think the biggest misconception is that scheduling sex is somehow like, oh, it's not spontaneous. It's a vibe killer. Child, ain't nobody said nothing about a massage. You can schedule a massage and be very excited to go to a massage. You can schedule things and put it on your calendar, be super excited for it versus being like, oh, we're scheduling sex. We're old. You know, we don't do like, what's wrong with us? Versus these are play dates. These are times where you really get to spend time together and like have the most erotic experience ever.
And you can look forward.
And you can look forward to it.
I think part of it is scheduling sex sounds like there's no foreplay. It sounds like, all right, said 5 o'clock, it's 5 o'clock. Like, you know what I mean?
Yes.
But I feel like, how do you then, if you know is about to be down at like 9, then how do you throughout the day spice things up?
Curate. You have to curate desire. You have to curate romance. Like in the constraints in modern life that we have, when we have no responsibility, we can think about sex all day. But with our life the way that it is, we have to be in the mindset, we have to prioritize sex. And so that's just as a relationship. But aside from the relationship, how are we doing that for ourselves? Because so many people, women, do not even understand their own desire. They don't even know what turns them on. They don't know what gets them in the mood. And if you spent your entire day and a lot of your life giving an output, this is a time where you are nourishing and giving back to yourself. And so I think that some of the things that you can do to like spice things up, yes, text messages and all of that stuff, but I also like, you do some erotic reading. sometimes we don't know what is erotic to us. We read it, we name it, we're like, oh, okay, well, when I feel sensual, I am way more likely to be in a sensual mood.
You ain't lying. Cause there was, I'll tell you about the books, a couple books. It was just like, oh, we gotta try this.
We gotta try this. You need ideas, you need imagination.
I think especially for women, it's like very detailed. They tend to do like the slow builds and it's passionate sex and all of that, which by the way, reminds me, Esther Perel, I'm obsessed with her. And one of the things that she says for women is that a woman's next orgasm starts when the last one finishes.
That is correct.
And it's so true.
It's
like,
very
what does that mean? Elaborate.
Well, what it means is that our wanting and our desire for sex sometimes happens on the tail end of our last sexual experience. The more we have sex and the more it feels good to us, the more likely we are going to want to have sex.
Yeah, and it's stuff throughout the day.
It's stuff
always
throughout the day.
It's the little things that you do throughout the day that, for me, I've found really is foreplay.
Let's talk about these microsexual moments that we can have.
I was just going to ask you, because I feel like let's make it tangible. Because to piggyback off of what you were saying earlier, like I feel like I'm not the most sexual person, right? Like I'm not gonna send the most erotic texts or whatever because I'll laugh at myself, right? But
LOL.
I'm really about to be like, and then crack a joke. Like I feel I need to fill the uncomfortable silence with like, let me crack a joke. But it's what you said about like, then go to that uncomfortable space, right? And then that's where you like leave room for the awkward. So like, what text? Was it 2 o'clock?
Send him something now. Right. Robert's in the other room. He's gonna come out like, what you trying to do? But I do, one of the things that we like doing is after like a really good night, the next morning, like a recap. Like talk about like, hey, about last night. You know what I mean? And you kind of hype yourself up to like, maybe let's top that tonight. That type of thing is, I mean, that's very literal, but like when you're being affectionate, although men have the problem of, it's like, if we're being affectionate, we gotta go.
You were saying there's like micro moves that you can make throughout the day.
Yeah, I think that especially with women, the way that we get to desire is so multifaceted. And a lot of times, like our desire is so responsive. It's not something that, oh yes, horniness falls out of the sky and I'm just waiting to catch it. Right. You know, like it's just something that
sounds like, very convenient. Yeah.
You got to be quicker than that. You know, like it's not like that. For us, it's just it's responsive. It's responsive to our mood and have we given back to ourselves and how we feel and also being made love to in our minds. Like, you know, that intellectual, that mental, being like erotic in your mind and like doing me in my mind gets me off way more, you know, and it kind of sets the stage up. So I think that there's so much space for these intimate moments of connection. I don't think that we have to wait till bam, we're ready to be intimate and that's the time where we're connecting. I mean, just really being able to like make out and kiss each other instead of every morning we do the bye, bye, bye. We have like these little pecks versus what does it mean to like literally grab your partner? Yeah. And
but that's,
like,
it's funny because Jordan's like, for what though? Like, I'm just like, but that's like, okay. But yeah, like it always has to lead to something.
Yes, we call it non-sexual touch, where how do we touch each other in a way that is erotic, in a way that is sensual, but it doesn't always lead down the path to intercourse.
I liken it to like adding stuff to a jar that then you can pour out when you have sex later on that night.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
It has to be a slow build. Can we look at desire as this slow build throughout the day?
Can you look at the camera and tell Robert and Jordan that?
Slow build. Start at 8 a.m. Not 8 p.m.
Slow build. And that's just for all of us. And especially for women, like we need to warm up the body. Yeah. We need foreplay. We need to feel sensual. We need to be touched. We need to be aroused. And we get there various different ways. And we have to be able to curate that. Sometimes, and I think just the realest thing that I can say is we're not having the sex that's worth desiring. Ooh. We're just not having sex that is erotic enough for us to want it.
Okay.
And if that's where people are at and you find yourself in that place, then it's up to us to decide, what do I want sexually? Yeah. And what is erotic to me? And what's the kind of sex life that I actually want? And if there are some gaps, this is where you can have those conversations lovingly with your partner so that you can get to a better place in your intimacy.
So how do you as a woman initiate? Because for me,
Yes.
I feel like you have to initiate. That's part of what gets me going. Otherwise, then it's like, oh, look, guess I'm doing all the work here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or it also just doesn't make me feel desired. But I also feel like it leaves so much on the table.
It does. I think, why don't we talk about empowered initiation? Because I think that sometimes people think that when they initiate, they're just like, there's somehow they're weak for doing it, or somehow it means that they're thirsty.
Yes, I'm like, we're married, but damn.
They feel thirsty, right? But I think that it can be this wonderful part of agency and empowerment and embodiment. When I'm aroused and I'm turned on and I give you that energy, that is the most empowered thing that I can do, is to share it with you. If you self-pleasure and you're like, you know what? It's your turn. Now that I'm taking that erotic energy that I have and now I'm bringing it for us and for our benefit.
Yeah.
And so I think that instead of feeling awkward or weird, I think a lot of my clients will say, well, I never thought it was okay to initiate. Like, that's not how I was raised. Like, I was raised for the partner to come find me, or for my partner to initiate for me. But then a lot of times when the partner initiates, we're like, nah, I don't want that. So it puts a lot of us in double binds, because it's like, well, I can't initiate, but then when my partner initiates, I'm not ready.
Initiate between 8 and 9 p.m.
Correct.
When this show isn't on. And
exactly.
I'm going to give you 2 good scooches. And if you don't pick up the cue,
so there has to be clarity around initiating intimacy, because when I tell you, most of the work that I do is literally like air traffic control. Like, all right, so are you trying to say this? You're trying to say this, because we completely miss each other.
It's almost like that whole, which I feel like relationships in general fall victim to it. If he wanted to, he would. He don't know.
He
like,
doesn't
can't
know
read your
what you
mind.
want, because he doesn't know, or your partner doesn't know what you desire.
I have heard from men how refreshing it is when a woman knows what she wants.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
That is
There's
one
no
of the
guessing
most
game.
erotic things for partners. Think about it. When your partner comes to you with an incredible amount of desire, and you're like, well, all right, well, you into it? Well, shoot, I'm into it too.
Yeah.
Like, that's the sexiest thing that you can experience with your partner. Like, when things go awry, even when you do have sex and that you feel like it's obligatory, or you feel like it's out of obligation, or like, all right, well, let me do it because we haven't done it in a while, your partner feels that.
Oh, yeah.
And I have so many times where people have been like, well, it feels wrong for me to do this, because I know that my partner's not into it, and I can see their face, and people remember. Yes, exactly. So I would say, if you self-pleasure and then see what happens after that, like, feel like, okay, well, I self-pleasured, and now I want to go find my partner, and I want to share it with them, and I want to initiate with my partner.
Yeah.
I think that it can be a really great place of empowerment and like joy and pleasure.
Quick sidebar. The little racy text, I accidentally sent it to one of my friends.
No, you didn't.
Oh,
no, you didn't.
She was like, ma'am, this is a Wendy.
See, and that would give me like the ammo, like, this is why I don't do this.
And then you're like, you're welcome.
That was just a little suggestion for you and your boo. So just be careful, because sometimes when you get into it.
God.
So I guess I want to make sure that like folks have some practical, actionable things. So if you're someone that wants to spice up your relationship,
Yes.
what do you go home and do right now?
A couple of things. One, you need to have a conversation about what intimacy means for both of you. Because if your sex is not worth like desiring, then you need to start from there. Before you go and buy a toy, get a new lube, or anything like that, that's foundational. You need to understand what kind of sex is erotic to you, turns you on. I can talk to you what turns me on. What are some things that I'm like, hey, this is no longer working. It used to work then, but hey, post baby, post body, post whatever, this is what I want now. And then both of you can really communicate and like have your sex life grow with you. Mm-hmm. I think the second thing that you can do is just practically, if you're experiencing pain during sex, if sex is uncomfortable, because that's another reason why sex is not worth desiring for a lot of people, because just practically it's like, it's uncomfortable. And every time I think about sex or my partner initiates, I'm thinking about anticipating the pain that I'm going to feel. And so that might mean you need a pelvic floor specialist. You might need to see a sex therapist like me so that we can work through, maybe there's just some belief systems that are there from religion, from childhood, from background that prevents me from really being present in my body during sex. Third, fourth, fifth, sixth things. I think there are lots of different things that you can do to spice up your relationship. You can start out by doing a relationship reset and going on vacation. You could do a staycation.
Like a sex vacation?
You could, a sex vacation.
Got it.
Or a retreat. You could call it like a lover's retreat, right? Where you are deciding, you know what, we're going to work on our intimacy.
I love that.
It doesn't necessarily have to lead to intercourse, because if you haven't been intimate in a long time, then there's like some fears and you don't want it to be pressure filled. You want this to be a space and a time for you to really be able to say, look, I'm putting my phone down. I'm focusing on us. Like, how do we work our way back to desire? Sometimes it requires you stepping out of your environment and doing like a complete reset. It's like a detox for your relationship, because now you have air, you're oxygenating your relationship by saying, look, what time you want to wake up today? Boom. You want to have sex in the morning? Great. Like, you're on a different rhythm and routine. And it could be a really great reset for you to just be able to like, go put your feet in your toes in the water and like just really talk about your intimacy and find your way back to each other. Because a lot of times people say they want more sex, but people want more closeness. People want more to be seen and to be held and to be wanted and to be chosen. And so when we don't feel those things, sometimes we desire sex, but it's what we get from sex, which is you.
Sex is the vehicle.
Sex is the vehicle.
Wow, that was, I didn't think this was going to be that deep.
It always is.
It always is. Right. It's always deep.
It's always deep.
So you mentioned 5, 6, 7, 8. How can people get a hold of you and meet with you?
Oh, absolutely. Find me on intimacymoons.com. You can work with me, follow me on XO Marissa on Instagram, XO Marissa Nelson. And I would just be so happy to walk this journey with you and help you just reimagine intimacy, because it's really awesome. When it's working well, ciao.
Wait, I wanted to ask you real quick, actually. You've been married for 15 years.
Yes.
What has your profession taught you about your sex life? What have you pulled from it?
Oh, I pulled so much. I think just personally and vulnerably, after the birth of my child, I was completely shut down sexually. And I think the hardest part about that was that I'm a clinician, and I thought that I can think my way out of it. And I kept trying to like will myself, because I'm like, and now I'm feeling guilty because I'm like, well, my partner and I should want sex, but I have no desire whatsoever. And also just structurally, like I just did not want sex. I did not want it. And so when my husband came to me and was like, listen, like, I need you. I want you. I love you. I miss us. It was one of those places where it was uncomfortable, but it was uncomfortable for growth, because nobody ever wants to feel like they're letting their partner down. And theoretically, I wasn't letting him down. I felt at the time that I was letting myself down for not satisfying him, which is where I find a lot of my patients, like my clients are in. But I think that it required us having not just one conversation. This is not a one conversation kind of a thing. It was a year of us cultivating our intimacy. It was, spending time together. And it was, what do you think about this? It was researching things together. It was trying different positions and being like, oh, well, that don't work. It was experimenting togetger. And that's how we got our sex lives back. And I'm happy to report I am absolutely getting my absolute back cracked.
She said results.
Results.
This is
guaranteed.
I do have one last question, because obviously you've talked to so many couples.
Yeah.
What have you noticed? Maybe top 3 things that the couples that are having a great sex life do best.
Oh, they're open. They are open. They're vulnerable when they don't get it right, when they are feeling something, they're vulnerable, and they're not blaming their partner for it. They're saying, this is what I'm accountable for, and this is what I'm feeling. What do you think? There is collaboration. There is, hey, what do you want? This is what I want. And then they meet in the middle. There's problem solving. When things aren't going well, they are focused on not saying it's you and it's your fault to fix it. They are super collaborative around doing it together. And I think that they're really open to pleasure and pleasing each other. Like really living this pleasure-centered life where they're like, well, your pleasure is my pleasure. How do we get more of it? And really being curious about finding their way there.
I love that. And I think to sum it all up, any challenges you have in your sex life, it's really an invitation.
It's always
to
an
level it up.
invitation. It's always an invitation. I say, and we will skill build around our business, our work. We will get life coaches. We'll do all the things. But when it comes to sex, be like, nope.
Right.
And we don't need all of that. And I think that wherever you feel uncomfortable with sex, it leaves some clues to let you know where you can level up. And when you level up, well, what's not to love? It's great.
Thank you so much for your time. We've learned so much, and we know we're gonna have you back on.
Oh,
we have
thank you.
But thank you so much for joining the group
Thank
chat.
you
I'm
for
gonna
having me.
This text real quick. Hold on. I'm just gonna
Send that
text. But thank you guys as well for joining. If you guys have any questions for Marissa, we know we're gonna have her back on, so feel free to drop it in the comments.
Absolutely. And make sure you subscribe on YouTube at Off the Record and on Instagram at Off the Record Podcast. We will see you on the next episode, and happy sex life. See ya.